We
Hello,
made it.
everyone. We are on episode 28.
28 people subscribe to our channel so we can show you episode 29. But this is going to be better.
We have Jamie Wollam here today. Thank you so much for being with us and joining us for this little chat.
It's my pleasure.
And I wanted to just kick things off and talk about drum education and what is missing, in your opinion, in drum education today.
How long do we have?
Oh, 5 hours.
There you go. To me, drum education would be a subheading of music education in general. As far as specifically for drum education, I think the biggest thing that's missing is funding. That's like, I think the only way, times really haven't changed. I'm going to take that back. Something drastically has changed since I was a young drummer and had the ability to, or find the ability to learn. And that is that now you can, look at our technology, right? So you can Zoom lessons, you can subscribe to channels that teach, if I had that back when I was a kid, I would have been in heaven. The only form of education I had was private instruction. Even I remember I went to the odd clinic, or tutorial that a local music store would have, and you just got the broad strokes from whatever the presentation was. It wasn't even personal. So the only real education you got was one-on-one taking lessons. And the price of lessons has always been, even comparatively, it's not cheap, it's not cheap to learn, and that affords teachers to make a living. And I understand all of that because I taught for years as well. But I think, I think funding is, if there was a easier way that somehow you could obtain information more affordably, I think that would be a beautiful thing. And as far as what's missing from education in general, I got to be honest, and I may be completely left field with this. I think there's not a whole lot missing, especially since you have such amazingly broad access to. I could Google right now how to play any number of Latin beats, odd time, how to be in a rock band, how to do, and I could watch it anywhere from a 5-minute to a 5-hour tutorial, or sign up for bring up someone's website that I could join for. So I don't know. I think there's a great deal of education available. As far as music, though, in general, again, in music education, I think that's severely lacking, especially in the public domain, schools, especially. I think the first thing that continues to get cut is art and music programs, which is really baffling to me because it's such an integral part, especially even now. The impact that this whole COVID thing has had with the ability for musicians to survive, and just you can feel it. We've been in this whole weird sci-fi scene for so long now that it's like the ability of not going to be able to see live music performed live, really, or in very sporadic and, like I said, kind of bizarre settings is really a trip. So I don't know. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I think in terms of drum education, I think there's more out there available now in many formats than when I was younger. So I'm grateful for that. But I think still music education lacks tremendously in terms of support, financially.
Cool. Yeah. But don't you think that probably it's a little bit, because you're an experienced drummer, so you Google, and then you can decide for yourself what you think it's good or not, because you have enough experience to know, well, what this guy's saying, I understand. What this guy says is totally rubbish. But don't you think that, is it a dangerous place for a beginner drummer to go in and get let's call it the wrong information?
I absolutely do. And I think that's a fantastic question. And I don't know. I thought about this prior to joining you guys about what stance might I take, and honestly, all I can do is just be as brutally honest from my opinion. And if that offends people, it may offend people, but I believe from my experience, it's my truth, right? I think a great deal of what's considered education, or what's put out there as education, is a great opportunity, or a dual-edged sword, because it seems to be a fantastic opportunity for people to just blow their chops all over everyone. And it's like, I don't know. I think again, I was thinking about this morning about when it comes to education. I have the utmost respect for players that technically can play, you know, I mean, again, the list is started way back when with Buddy Rich and continues all the way with Dave Weckl and Vinny and all, and, you know, but again, my experience is, what do you want to do with your drumming? If you want to be an educator, solely an educator, then of course going into the intricacy. But in my experience of 30 years of being a professional drummer, with some notable music acts, if I played 5% of what the majority of that stuff is teaching me, I wouldn't have a job, or I would have had to learn very quickly. And I kind of did years ago, but yeah, none of that stuff flies when that's not your job, at least in mainstream music. That's not your job as a drummer, your job. So then we can get back to the question, you know, there's a great deal of advanced educational stuff, but I think sometimes, I'll just say this, maybe you guys, this is beautiful because you're opening up my eyes to I'm learning by having this conversation. And I've often thought about this, but there's not a great deal of education about what it's like to be a professional drummer and how to navigate the pitfalls, financially, health, emotionally, of being on the road, what it's like to, you live with these people off, you know, nonstop for weeks to months at a time. Your ability to get along with people, your ability to keep a positive attitude, your ability to get proper rest when the travel can be absolutely absurd. Just, you know, so lots of education about maybe parts like that. Because again, most of the time people think, well, I'd love to learn how to play so I can, you know, perform music. I don't know too many people that spend hours upon hours just so they can simply master these skills to be to be shown to the walls of their garage, you know. So yeah, I can't say that I've seen a whole lot of education about everything other than how to, you know, do the perfect the one-stroke roll,
Yeah,
and,
I know.
you know, all that stuff. Yeah, so maybe that's missing. Maybe there's a good avenue, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna mention something. The guy gave an interview to Modern Drummers, so I guess it's okay if I say that. But Dean Castronovo, when he first joined Journey, he said that he wanted to impress the guys, and he played everything he knew. And then after they played the first song, Neil Sean looked at him and say, "Great, save that for your solo record."
Exactly. And I will be honest, I'll share two brief. Can I share something?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
I played with Jackson Browne for a spell, and you know, historic singer-songwriter, right? Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Running on Empty, Doctor My Eyes. I mean, he wrote Take It Easy for the Eagles, right? So he's been around forever. He's had everyone from Steve Gadd to Jim Keltner to Jeff Porcaro play on his records.
Pressure.
And right, exactly. And I remember the first rehearsal I was doing with Jackson Browne. We started Doctor My Eyes, which starts with, so full band, full rehearsal, first song, and he's playing the piano and his back's to me because I'm behind him, and he starts the riff for Doctor My Eyes, and we come into it, and about 4 bars into it, and again, I come from a rock and roll drum background, and it's a full band, we're amplified, it's pumping. We start the song, and I whip into the first drum fill since 6/8, and I start this shuffle groove, and I'm laying into it, and about 4 bars in, I just see his hand go up and wave everyone off, and it all crumbles to an end, and he turns around to me and he goes, "Are you playing rim shots?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Don't. Center of the drum. Let's try it again." And I can't tell you, like the sweat and the nerve, like the that just rush of like, oh my God. And everyone in the band's kind of just looking and going, okay, you know, like I just got filleted right there on the first. And it was because I was playing rim shots, right? It's too aggressive. It's not the sound of the way the snare drum's supposed to sound for his music, and especially for that song. Nice, fat in the middle of the drum, right? And that was a huge lesson, you know, like it's my job as a drummer has always been, and I continue to work on this even with a band like Tears for Fears, is it's providing the type of rhythmic landscape that the song requires, period. Just that's it. And to keep us, obviously, to keep the tempo so the rest of the band has the the reference of where the time is. That's what a drummer is, in my opinion, is to do.
Cool.
Yeah.
I read that you played with Michael Jackson.
I did.
What's tell me.
Well, it's an interesting story because, again, there's not a whole bunch, and I'm probably going to take my own air out of my horn tooting or whatever. But so what ended up happening is a good friend of mine who is a producer, songwriter, engineer in Los Angeles, where I'm from, who I used to do a lot of session work for, a ton of session work for. He had been involved in Michael Jackson's camp since the Bad record, engineering and stuff. And then, so he was very deeply rooted with the family and the Jackson estate. And so long story short is it was the record that came out after Michael had passed away, posthumous record, they call it. And I think it was just called Michael. And so long story short, I got a phone call from him about a session, as I did often, but he said, this one, I can't tell you any information, just show up at this time and whatever. And I'll give you the details. And I said, okay. So it was 2 days later, I showed up, I had all my drums with me, and I walk in and I said, where should I set? He goes, don't even bother bringing your drums in today. We're going to sit down. And there was a room full of people. And basically, long story short, I had about an hour and a half meeting with attorneys and some other people that I won't name it. Bottom line is it was a very secretive thing because at that time, people that had done a lot of writing and recording demos with Michael had this music that they wanted to be able to finish because it's Michael Jackson with his vocals already recorded to maybe a piano or a guitar or whatever. And there was a bunch of legal stuff with the Jackson estate and who was going to have. And so I had to sign a disclosure. It was about 15 pages long. I had to get an attorney to look at it and whatever, because if this were to leak, it could be devastating that I could be held liable and whatever. So bottom line is that's how it started. Michael wasn't involved. He had already passed at the time. But what I was involved in was I played drums on 3 tracks that are on that record. So basically his vocal was down, the structure was already there, and these writers and producers that were finishing the music were there. And so I went in and did the drums for these songs with which again, so I guess it's as close as I could get. I had met him once before, years before that. But bottom line is to still play drums, to hearing his voice in a studio situation. I had the opportunity to go, can you play that back and just solo his vocal? Like just to hear his, it was pretty amazing. So it was a fantastic experience. And again, it was a great opportunity to, again, that typically wasn't my style. But in that genre, again, they were mixing live drums with, a lot of programming and drum loops and stuff. So it was a fantastic experience. And again, it is part of my resume. So
cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you started telling the Jackson Browne story saying you were a rock drummer. Mm-hmm. So how did you get started on drums? Who were your first, let's say, influence as a rock drummer?
Well, I'm probably going to throw out some names that might be, well, you guys are both drummers. So, and then as educators and drummers yourself, but I started the reason I play drums period is Peter Criss from Kiss. Cool. So when I was 10 years old, I got turned on to Kiss, and it was like superheroes, but playing music. Right. So Peter Criss was my idol. At very first concert I went to, I was 10 years old, and my mom took me and my sister to see Kiss, and I was hooked. So it started with Kiss, then it was AC/DC. So Phil Rudd was a huge influence of mine. And it's so funny, and I'm gonna say this as a quick aside, but I don't think a lot of drummers like Phil Rudd and some of those rock drummers so easily get bashed. Yeah. By people in the drum community as for Ringo Starr, and you can have debates left and right about all that stuff. The bottom line is I just know that I've heard other drummers play with AC/DC, and I've heard other drummers play those songs in different format, and there's nothing like it's a whole microscopic science to get into how Phil Rudd played to make those songs feel. When you listen to Back in Black and you listen to Highway to Hell and you listen to You Shook Me All Night Long, his drumming is incredible. Yeah, it is incredible. And yes, it's very simplistic, but it's actually so simplistic that it becomes more more specific in how he feels things, his phrasing and his timing and how he moves with the guitar. I don't even know, probably most of the stuff they did was not to a click. You know, back then they were playing it live playing it live together. And but yeah, so AC/DC, and again, then I went even deeper into more of the, what would be considered at that point, it was called heavy metal. I guess now it would be just be considered hard rock, but Black Sabbath. So listen to a ton of Black Sabbath, Bill Ward, Dio. So Vinny Appice, right? I studied with Carmine a little bit when I was younger. Yeah, which was incredible. He had a book called Realistic Rock. I remember came with a little record in the back that I could put on, and that's where I first learned and then it got in. That's when I learned the whole kind of triplet thing with the John Bonham bass drum kind of stuff. And so then I got turned on to Led Zeppelin, and that basically shot me into space, right? Cool. So then it was, and then that was all through high school. So it was rock. And I was born and raised in Los Angeles. So during the mid 80s, it was when they call it hair metal, right? So it was when Rat and Poison and Motley Crue. So then I got into Tommy Lee, and through that I got turned on to a drummer by the name of Tommy Aldridge.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who's incredible. Like his early work with Pat Travers and Ozzy Osbourne is incredible. And that's where I really got into double bass. A guy named Scott Travis now, who plays with Judas Priest. Like, so I really got it, but that's about as heavy as I got. And then I went to, just out of high school, I went to a place called PIT in LA. Yeah. Percussion Institute.
I've been there too.
Yeah. So when I went there, that completely, I was going in thinking, you know, I'm going to be the next Scott Travis from Racer, just big double bit, whatever. And my head was blown with getting into Weckl and Vinny and a lot of the fusion Chick Corea. And playing with a big band and Latin and fusion.
What year were you there?
I went in 1989 to 1990.
Yeah. I
just out of high school.
Yeah. I was 95 to 96.
So if I can ask you, was it still Steve Houghton? Was the
no,
I don't know.
It wasn't there anymore. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So Steve Houghton was the director, who's incredible drummer, big band and chart. Yeah. So Steve Houghton. I studied with Steve Houghton, Richie Garcia, Efrain Toro, Joe Porcaro, right?
When I went, Joe Porcaro and Ralph Humphrey, they were the directors, both of them.
So Ralph Humphrey, same thing, man. Ralph Humphrey, I studied directly. His book, Even in the Odds, is one I like. That opened up my whole concept of just how to get more musical as a drummer. When you take a 1-bar phrase, and so in 4/4, you just take a 1-bar phrase of 16th notes or even 8th notes, and you break them into groups of 2 and 5, and it's just basic math. And then you hear how you can play that. It's like, oh, that's what it is. And the funny part is 90% of the guys that don't read or whatever, they don't even realize that's what they're doing. They're just playing musically, but that's how you actually decipher it and translate it to what it becomes. And so the marriage of musicality with with knowing what it is technically so you can pass it on is beautiful. And that's where I really got my eyes open to that. And then that's also when I really got into Jeff Porcaro, and because I wanted to be a studio drummer. That's what I wanted to do more than anything, was be the guy who is the call for, whatever. And so, yeah, guys like Jim Keltner and Jeff Porcaro. And so then I really got into learning how to read charts and that sort of began and then oddly enough, I ended up getting my first call for my first road work, right? And then I've been I've done a lot of both, but I've probably been on the road far more than I've been in the studio.
Okay. Just a side note, all drummers mentioned in this conversation have a surname, but Vinny Colaiuta. Vinny doesn't need a surname.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the thing is, and it happens. I met a friend of mine this afternoon, a drummer also from England, and every time we talked about Vinny Colaiuta, was just Vinny. We mentioned, all with the surname and Vinny and then Vinny. It's always all you need to say.
That's absolutely true. I was actually trying to think if there's anyone else. There was a drummer named Zorro.
Yeah.
But I guess, but that was just his name. So you had to just say it. But yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And what a landmark to just be known by your first name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we
That's
all
beautiful.
want.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like we've all got that in common because I was taught by
Yeah.
Joe and Ralph as well.
Yes. Beautiful.
So it's nice.
Yeah.
Good guys. I wanted
Definitely.
to ask how you got the Tears for Fears gig. What happened?
Yeah. Oddly and interestingly enough, I was a bit surprised by it as well. I have yet to have a gig that I've done, and I don't, this is going to sound like it may come out the wrong way. I think it's more of a weird thing, and has left me even probably unprepared for certain parts of a career, but I've never had to audition for a gig. I probably wouldn't get it if I had to go audition, because you learn how to audition well, right? But I had been, the guitar player in Tears for Fears is a gentleman named Charlton Pettis, and he's a songwriter and producer in his own right. And I had done a great deal of session work for him over the years in Los Angeles. And at the time, there was another drummer, fantastically technically amazing drummer named Nick DiVirgilio, who was playing with Tears at the time. And due to some scheduling issues, and Tears wasn't touring a lot at that time, and I think Nick, who had, was quite heavy in the industry, and had a family, and they weren't working a great deal. He had taken a gig with Cirque du Soleil, where they have a live band, and had taken that gig and signed a contract for it for a certain length of time. And lo and behold, maybe a few weeks into his 3 or 4 month contracted commitment, Tears decided they were, were going to do something on the road. And so they needed to make a change. And so Charlton, who was in the band and had been in the band, oddly enough, one of the main criteria, and again, a band like that could have, there's a lot of first string guys you could call, right? Known names, right? That would just jump in. But one of the criteria was Nick did a great deal of singing in background harmonies in that band. So they knew that it needed to be, they wanted someone who could sing background. And Charlton, from working with him and him working with me and other bands that I'd been in, knew that I sang as well. So he said, I know the guy. And that was it. It was just him asking me my availability, if I'd be interested. And I said, yeah. And oddly enough, a band like Tears, I thought, I was a fan of the band. I knew the hits, but I was much more into heavier, rock music at the time. And so I kind of was like, yeah, I guess, but I was thinking, isn't that a lot of drum machine and whatever? But the point is, the band has live for many, many years have had a live drummer. So they're much more of a rock band live than they are, a new wave or tracky or loop band.
Had you seen them live before?
I had seen them once about 10 years before that, and oddly enough, I was looking forward to seeing it, but I went specifically to the show because there was a band called Jellyfish, who's one of my all-time favorite bands. Andy Sturmer, right? Stand-up lead singer. So I went, and Jellyfish was opening up for them. So I actually went with the intention to see Jellyfish and thought, oh, great, and I'll watch Tears for Fears. And was blown away, was absolutely blown away. That was on the Elemental tour. So yeah, maybe around 94, 95, something like that. And that's the only time I had seen him. So I knew, and then, so I said, sure. And I was sent, management sent me an email with a group of songs, and I started listening to the songs. And of course, first one, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, heard that. Shout comes up next. Of course, I heard that. Mad World, I heard that. But then it started getting deeper. And to be honest with you, I was like, oh God, I didn't know that was Tears for Fears. Of course I know that song. Right. Next one. Oh, I thought that was Depeche Mode. I didn't know that's Tears for Fears. Right. And so my instantly I was like, wow. And then to be honest with you, I got quite nervous. I was like, oh, shoot, I better get in and do my homework. And then again, as I got into, some of the drummers that have played with Tears for Fears are monsters too. Manu Katché and Phil Collins and Simon Phillips, and like some big time heavy hitters that have recorded and toured with him. Exactly. Same thing. No pressure. So, but it's been, I just realized and was told this not too long ago that actually I am, even since Manny Elias, the very original drummer, I am the longest standing, I'm the longest drummer. That's I guess, what do you call it? on your roster. I hold the longest time in the band. It's since 2010, so 11 years now.
Cool.
Well, you're clearly loved. Like, you're clearly loved, because as I said to you, like, I got so many messages from people just going, no way, Jamie's the best guy ever. He's done this. And like, you just being really lovely, not only an amazing drummer, but a really great person, and like going out of your way to helping other drummers and people. And I think, you know, that's the stuff that
drummers and people, Kira. Come on, Kira. Drummers and people.
Drummers and people.
Yeah. He helps drummers and people. Come on, Kira.
I'm going.
I still have a hard time calling them people, right?
Drummers are like here, you know.
No, that really, and I messaged you back when you shared that with me. That really made my whole day. It put a huge smile on my face. You know, I don't know. I have a hard time with stuff like that. I'm learning how to accept kindness of that nature, because I've always worked really hard on trying to maintain. I've been doing this for so long, right? Even the fact that I thought I'm going to do this interview, I'm sitting at a dining room table, like I'm not in the studio, I'm not behind my drums, but we're just going to share a little bit of my experience. And I don't know if people would find that boring or not. I don't know, but I've been doing this professionally for 30 something years, right? And I've seen waves. I've been around plenty of guys with heads so big, I can't believe it. Like I get blown away that they don't realize that they're acting a certain way. And then deep down inside, I go, they must know they're acting that way. They just have figured out a way to justify it or something. But to me, I don't know. I learned something from everybody. Like, that's why teaching is so important. Like, there's nothing that brings me more joy than watching a new student. I was even going to say a young drummer, but it doesn't even have to be a young drummer, but someone who you convey something and they get it. And when they get it, their whole countenance changes. And, you know, that could be with anything. It just so happens that I have that experience with drums, right? But to see someone, and there's just something about the human spirit, and also the position that when people look up to you or love the band and have spent their life loving the music that you're on stage creating or putting out there, that touches a lot of people, and it touches them very deeply. And that's, to not respect that gift or that position, I think is really foolish, you know. And so there's great opportunities to be able to bring joy to people, and the difference of what it takes to be able to say, hey, thank you. When someone reaches out on social media and says, man, fantastic show, for me to take 10 seconds and go, man, thank you. And actually to take in, I still do. We haven't played, you know, because of everything's shut down. But I used to make it a point after sound check, but after they open the doors in these arenas, when these people, I make it a point to walk around. I'll put on a ball cap, and not that anybody really knows who the drummer is. It'd be different if I was Roland or Kurt, but I put on my glasses and a hat and I walk around, and the energy is palpable of these people that they've taken off, they've hired babysitters, they paid for tickets 2 months ago, they've driven hours sometimes to get there, they've paid for parking, they've come in, they're ecstatic, and I get pumped by that. And so therefore I want to make sure that it's an experience that they can enjoy at least with everything I can give them, you know. And that also goes into maintaining humility and gratitude and communication as often as I can outside of just the performance, you know, because I think just being a good human has a lot of positivity in these days.
Yes, it does. And what's the deal with being known as a stand-up drummer?
Yeah, so I I heard about that. I did play for a while, for probably 3 years. I've worked in many different factions of making a living being a drummer, and I was in a cover band, top 40 band, years ago for about 4 years, and we played every weekend. And when you're in a cover band and you're doing 3 45-minute sets 3 nights a week, you can't place all of that. That's how I learned how to sing and play drums as well, because you cannot put that much responsibility on one frontman. It's just impossible. So I started taking over a lot of the lead vocal work, and And then I got really bored with sitting down. I had to do something different. And I got turned on. I remember Slim Jim Phantom stood up and Andy Sturmer stood up, and I was like, I'm going to try this. And I found that it actually helped me sing a lot better because I was straight up. My diaphragm was straight. I could sing higher, higher range. And so I just started. So for about 3 years, and again, in the small club scene that I was playing at that time, people going to see a cover band and seeing the drummer sing and standing up was a pretty bizarre thing, right? So my buddy Steve often reminds me of, like, he was there in those days when I was the stand-up drummer. Yeah.
Nice.
I thought he meant stand-up guy, like, I'll have your back. No. He meant a stand-up drummer. So, yeah, no, it's been quite a interesting journey, even to where we're at now. What an interesting time. But thank God for I commend you guys. I'll just share this briefly too. I came to hear about you guys because social media can be a really beautifully positive thing, and it can be a weird rabbit hole depending on what you use it for. But I'm good friends with a drummer named Dave Stark on social media, and so I saw that Dave had done the show with you guys. And again, I don't get a great deal of time. I kind of intentionally don't spend a lot of time on social media, so I don't find myself going down certain rabbit holes. But there's an amazing community of drummers, and you guys know this, but drummers have a very different camaraderie than I think any other type of musicians. It's a brotherhood and a sisterhood that's very different than guitar players and very different than lead singers. There's just, I don't know what it is. I'm not going to say that it's less ego and less competition, because there's plenty of that too, depending on that. But there's just, I don't know. It's just that thing. I think it's the same internal drive that has you play drums from the beginning, and the way that we share information and are open with information is just really different. And there's just, like, once you've experienced locking into a groove and being the driving force, and it's almost that thing where drummers know they have a very confident sense of what their job is, and don't have to be, and yet you're buried most of the time behind a drum set, and the least recognizable, but yet how important your job is. And there's a beautiful balance in that anonymity, and yet without it, like, no one else can really, you know what I mean? Like, the importance of it. So, and exactly. I think that's a beautiful thing. So I'm just really grateful to even have a chance to share with you guys any experience that I can attribute to this whole thing.
We're grateful you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. So what next? Hit me with the biggies.
Kira,
I have a question. I'm just looking at my list. I'm just trying to.
She's very well prepared. She has a list.
Oh, there's a list. There's a list.
Yeah. So I guess I wanted to talk about sobriety, because I noticed on your Insta that you've got a year, and I want to say, huge respect and congratulations. It's something that we don't talk about this much on this platform, but I kind of wanted to talk about it because I think for people who might be struggling, it's good to just get it out there. And I just wanted to know a couple of things, really. To what extent has being sober affected your life and drumming? Is the first.
That's a fantastic question. And I assume, again, this format, I thought about it when we communicated about talking about it. I'm absolutely grateful to share my experience, and really wide open. I don't have to necessarily, go into gory details, but I can cover and it could be another 5-hour program just to talk about that, right? But however, I don't think it's any secret to anyone who has had any participation in the music business or being a musician that music goes hand in hand with entertainment, which goes hand in hand with, lots of, I put it this way, there's no other job I know of where they ask you prior to showing up for work, what would you like to drink in your dressing room? You know what I mean? Like, bottom line, or a studio where you walk in and we've all heard this story, legends and years worth of the interesting road that being a musician and artist and performer goes hand in hand with, you know, partying or the substances. And the bottom line is, I'm very grateful. I've had, mine was always alcohol. It's just alcohol, you know. Of course, anything else, and I've tried most everything, but most anything else that I tried was always after I had a significant enough amount of alcohol in my system to not care. So it's you know, it's a very interesting progress, right? You start by having a beer or two when you're at your gig and whatever, and it as life happens and stuff happens, and the older you get, the more life happens and whatever, and working full time. That's kind of what I referenced earlier too, about, you know, not much education on about what happens when you're out there doing it for a living, but it's very, very easy to begin to lean heavier on what I call the medication, right? Bottom line is, yeah, I went deep, you know, I went deep and managed to sort of keep things semi under control. To this day, I've never lost a job or a gig fully because of my drinking. I still managed, they call that functioning, you know, whatever. But I became a liability because my after gig behaviors and antics became really self-destructive and really risky. You know, to the like, bottom line is, if people see you intaking the amount of alcohol that I was intaking after a show, the question, eyebrows raised about how he was going to, would he make lobby call at 6:30 in the morning when it's already 1 o'clock and he's just headed out to go to the bar from the hotel when we get back from a gig. Like, how's he gonna, you know what I mean? And then the shape you're in, the shape you get in mentally, the shape you get in physically, just how it all affects you. And it's so much work to try and keep that together, which, you know, I did, but yet still not, it's noticeable, you know? And so a lot of other things began to happen in my personal life. And again, I pull no punches. I don't want to go too, I don't know how much you guys, but I've experienced so much depth. It took hitting as rock bottom as I was, I guess, gonna let it hit before I really made the internal decision to make a change. And this I'm coming up on 14 months of sobriety. This is not, I've been involved in recovery for about 10 years. So, and this is the first time that I've had 14 months of honest, true, real sobriety. And so it's been a very difficult journey, and it's cost me a great deal of emotional price, and it's cost people close to me a great deal of pain. And, you know, and it just came around to a point where I decided I don't want to live this way. You know, I had to face legal ramifications for my addiction. I spent time, you know, in jail because of it. I went through as much as I could possibly want to have to go through, other than you just decide to take it all the way to the bitter end, right? Mm-hmm. And then people are saying, I remember that guy, or literally putting you in a pine box, you know, or mm-hmm. I could do what it takes. And the reality is, and I say this with so much joy and gratitude, the reality is that it is so much easier to live the life that I'm living now than it was to continue to try and uphold myself in that state. But you have to be willing, completely willing to surrender yourself to do some work and do the changes. And that's the hardest part, is bringing yourself to think that I could live life without alcohol or drugs, and I can live life without that medication or that buffer, you know? So I hope that makes sense. As far as what it's been like, I can only tell you it's been amazingly beautiful. It's been painful because then again, there's reparations to be made. I can't walk away from 15 years worth of, you know, significantly self-centered behavior and just kind of go, oopsie, like, sorry, everyone. Anyways, back to normal. Are we all good? Here, take me back. Like, yeah. There's a lot of honest reparations to the best of my ability to be made, and yet balancing that out with I've beaten myself up enough too. So it's not about living in
Yeah.
guilt or shame, but it's just one day at a time doing the best they can. So the interesting part is this is all sort of came in conjunction with the entire world being hit with this craziness and change. And so to be really blunt with you too, I've only played, I have a pair of drumsticks and I play guitar too, but my life is really different. I'm Canadian. I have dual citizenship. I've been up in British Columbia for the last almost 2 years. For the last 9 months, I make no bones about it. I'm working, right? Not in music. I'm working at a lumber yard in British Columbia. Like I work around lumber. I'm learning skills and trades. I operate a crane. I operate a forklift. I mean, and that's a huge reality. Like some people go like, oh, I'm not going to share about that. Like I don't know how to say it. I'm proud of it. Like you know what I mean? My life couldn't be any more different. It makes me emotional, but
Cool.
could not be any more different than maybe 2 years ago in certain ways. But at the same time, I still communicate with the guys. I'm still the drummer for Tears for Fears. When things come back to whatever it is they're working, finishing up a new record, which I play drums on, which is fantastic.
Nice.
But, like in the meantime, I need to be a responsible, active member of society, providing for my family and showing up, and people depend on me to show up at work, and I get paid for that work, and it allows me to survive and continue to be a responsible human being. And like,
Cool.
those are things that for off and on for a great deal of time, I've really, because of this profession and doing it professionally, playing drums professionally, it's really easy to miss out on some of those basic responsibilities that you need to learn in life. Because when you're sort of, when you've got someone willing to knock on your door and wake you up and get you down to the lobby so you can get in a car to have someone drive you to an airport, so another pilot, these people are all the responsible ones that show up and do their job, right? So you can kind of stay in a really weird bubble. And so I'm learning a lot about myself, about life, how to be responsible, how to be consistent, how to be disciplined, how to be kind, how to have patience, how to, work out in the great outdoors. Like I don't know if you can see, like it's snow. It's basically almost snowing here today. It's freezing cold. It's pouring rain, but I couldn't be more grateful.
Excellent. So. And I'm pretty sure when the band goes back on the road, it's going to be a much more pleasant experience for you as well.
It's beautifully put. And I'll tell you this, of those closest to me, few closest to me have said the same thing. I do believe wholeheartedly my appreciation for what I've been given and what I have worked really hard to achieve, because I have worked, but I think my appreciation for that will be something that I look forward to it with great anticipation and tremendous gratitude, because I think there's an appreciation for it that has been really easy to neglect or to forget.
Cool. And I hope the band comes to London so me and Kira can see you play.
Yes, absolutely. You guys will be the first two on my list.
Cool. Thank you. All right. I think that's all the time we have for it today.
Beautiful.
It was amazing. Really, really, really good. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. Again, I know these probably all take on individually a shape of their own and go down certain roads, but I'm really honored that you guys decided to take the time to share, because there is a part of me that aside from the technical aspect of drumming, being able to maybe share a little bit about and again, going from Peter Criss and Phil Rudd to talking about the fact that I'm in recovery, like I'm just really grateful that you guys were open to hearing a bit about my story and just share such encouragement and kindness with me too. It means the world.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Cool.
I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Have a good one.
All right, you too.